everyone. This is ring announcer Thomas Triber. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the time has arrived for Inside Boxing Weekly. So here are your hosts, Mike Goodpaster, John Einreinhofer, and Jeremiah Preisser on the Grueling Truth Sports Network.
Welcome, everybody, to Inside Boxing Weekly on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. Inside Boxing Weekly is brought to you by the Retired Boxers Foundation. Make sure you check them out on Facebook, run by Jackie Richardson and Alex Ramos. Make sure you check them out. I'm your host for the weekly boxing show, Mike Goodpaster. Right now, I want to welcome in my co-host. First up, Jeremiah, the Monster Preisser.
Good afternoon, all. I'm excited to be on. We got a full crew here.
A beautiful crew here. All right, and next up, another part of the beautiful crew. He's a man that usually we have to prod him to get any opinions out of him, and he doesn't really like to talk that much, but we still have him on the show. Help us welcome John Einreinhofer. How you doing, John?
Thanks, Mike. I got to agree. That was a good intro. I was chuckling a little bit to myself.
The silent man. Yeah.
And next up, he is one of the hosts with Dennis Taylor, the Ringside Boxing Show. Also wrote Intimate Warfare, the tale of Gotti Ward with Dennis Taylor. Pictures by Ed Mulholland. We don't want to forget that. Help us welcome to the Grueling Truth, John Raspanti. How you doing, John?
Doing great, Mike. Hey, Jeremiah. Hey, John. Just a pleasure to be on with you guys.
All right, so
good to have you, John.
We're just going to cut to the chase because I know John wants to talk about it, Einreinhofer. So, John, I know that you were spellbound by Saturday night's top-ranked ESPN show again. Do you want to tell us what you saw?
Yeah, I saw two fights that weren't particularly entertaining after we had a main event that was going to be a fiasco even if it came off, and then we had a bizarre circumstance where it didn't even come off. And I saw the numbers got posted today, 523,000. That's on basic cable. They're not even doing HBO numbers. So, something's got to be done. In the main event, we had Pacquiao-Matthysse, not a bad fighter, a guy, I think's legit top 10, just into the top 10 if you're ranking 17 divisions. He'd probably even crack it in 8 divisions, but I got to go with the old Dennis Green line. He is what we thought he was, which is just that, and he's not going any further than that. And you had him in a main event. You had Vences on an undercard bout that was not entertaining, not good. So it seems like maybe finally, after we get through this week, that Top Rank, it's long overdue, maybe pushing the panic button, because they're talking about Antonio Orozco and Ramirez for one of their upcoming fights, which actually would be a good fight if Orozco could make the weight, but he's missed it two out of his last 4 times at 140. So that's 2 undefeated guys. That's the kind of fight they need, but I submit it's probably too late already. They've probably destroyed whatever goodwill they had with what they've been putting on.
All right, Jeremiah, do you agree with him?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, you follow, this follows Gilberto Ramirez versus, whoever he fought. Again, I mean, John was talking.
We'll just call him Bob.
Yeah, John was talking last week about how, we won't remember him afterwards. I know his last name was Angulo. I know that much.
There you go.
I'm just kind of
Ramiro?
Romer, I think.
Romer. We'll call him Bob.
Yeah, let's call him Bob Angulo. That works for me. But no, I mean, you had that followed up by this, and there was just really nothing there to get excited about. I mean, Pacquiao-Matthysse, he had his opportunity to shine brightly. They were like, hey, main event is scrapped. This is, you're in the limelight. Make the most of it, and he didn't. I mean, to his opponent's credit, he'd never been stopped. He was a tough guy. He presented a stylistic challenge. Pacquiao-Matthysse was able to go 10 rounds. That's the first time that he did so. That works in his favor. But, I just didn't see anything in Pacquiao-Matthysse, and I like him. I've interviewed him before. Nice guy, but I just didn't see anything there that would indicate he's going to be a world beater. But then again, 147 I don't think is as talented as a lot of people do, with Spence and Crawford as a clear number 1 and number 2 guys, and an inactive Thurman. And then you got, Danny Garcia and Sean Porter. I mean, we kind of, those guys have plateaued already. Yeah, it was just nothing there. I mean, I was certainly one of those people who did not tune in Saturday. It just didn't feel worth it to me. But I did want to express slight concern. We had the main event fall through because Danny O'Connor couldn't make weight. He was hospitalized, spending 4 hours in a hot tub. And now we have a guy in Orozco who hasn't made weight his last two outings. I don't. What sort of measures is he going to take to finally get down to 140? Hopefully he's not putting himself in a similar predicament. But yeah, I mean, Orozco versus Ramirez, it's better than what we've got.
All right, John Raspanti, do you have any opinion on Bob Arum's recent fiasco?
Well, I don't disagree that the card was a dud. I was watching it just to see Gabe Flores Jr. because I'd written an article about him and I wanted to see. And he's a flashy kid. He's, the youngest ever signed by Top Rank at 16. So I was watching it for that. And Vences, I don't know what happened there. He seemed to be holding back. The main event was just a showcase. Everybody knew it. I think it's too early to say that the goodwill is done. I think if they get a good fight on ESPN, a good, something good that people are talking about, they'll bounce back some. But there's no denying that the card wasn't very interesting. Hell, I will admit that I was possibly going to go because I hadn't gone to a fight in a long time, and I didn't go when I heard about Danny O'Connor, who thankfully is doing well from what I understand. So that drive would have been about a 350-mile drive, so I think I made the right call on that. But I'm going to wait a little bit before I'm saying that they've used up all their goodwill. You know how boxing is. They have low ratings, and then they bounce back. I think if they have a good fight, if Orozco can make the weight, that would be a good fight with Ramirez. And in Fresno, where they sell out with Ramirez, can generate some excitement, and it's a good fight. I think that'll help. But they better do something good next time out.
All right, so let's go ahead and look at the fights that are coming up this weekend. We've got a couple of them that are interesting. We got Juan Jose Velasco, who is 20-0 with 12 knockouts, and he will fight Regis Prograis for a interim WBC World Super Lightweight title, which means absolutely nothing, so we're not going to bring that up again, John Einreinhofer. And, John, I know that you get almost excited about Regis Prograis as Jeremiah does against Vasil Lomachenko.
That's true. I like about everything about Prograis. The way he fights, he's got some skills, but he's aggressive and he looks to get people out of there. He's got tremendous punching power. He's also a boxing historian, and he follows the sport currently as a fan as much as a fighter. He's very on everything, so I think he's also got those positive attributes. I just hate to see him in against such a weak opponent. That fits in what we've been saying about, this ESPN series. It's just, Juan Jose Velasco, 31-year-old guy, hasn't beaten anybody. He's undefeated, doesn't have even a particularly high KO percentage. Prograis is a guy that goes to blow you out early, even if you've got something. With this guy, I like that about Prograis, but you're going into a fight where you would just expect it would be a disappointment for Prograis to let this guy last more than 3 rounds. So that's about all you have to look for. I just hope Prograis looks as good as he has. That's all he can do here. I think he's a guy that's the best 140-pound guy in the world, and I think he fits in good with those talented guys at welterweight. If he chooses to do that soon, I'd like to see that. I think everybody at this point like to see him and Josh Taylor. I'd like to see that myself. That's a very intriguing fight. That's a fight I wish we could just get to next, frankly. But, Prograis just continues to showcase himself. That's about all he can do here. But this is not a good matchup, and Prograis is a huge favorite.
Yeah, Jeremiah, you look at Velasquez's record. I mean, his last few wins, his last time out, he beat a guy that was 12-5-1. Before that, 10-3. Before that, 7-17, which that guy took him to a decision. When you look at this, I mean, it's just another throwaway fight. I mean, Prograis should go out, knock him out quickly, and we'll just move on from there.
Yeah, I can't really blame Prograis. I mean, his intention is to join the WBSS, which for all intents and purposes, I think will be a good thing in terms of marketability. But he couldn't get Ramirez in the ring with him. Bob Arum is delaying that one. And it's pretty obvious at this point. I mean, initially they were saying, okay, well, Prograis was going to be next in line. The WBC and their stupidity, they've got 4 belt holders or something just in that division. It's absurd. Again, I spotlighted that in an article. It's dumb. But yeah, Prograis isn't going to get Ramirez. So what's going to happen is they're going to have Ramirez sit out the tournament. Prograis and Taylor are going to be the 2 favorites there. Afterwards, you'll have a linear champion, and there'll be something to look forward to. And after it's all said and done, Ramirez can he can fall in line and become the next to fight whoever wins it. But it's good. I mean, Prograis he's going to blow the guy out, but it'll showcase yourself before getting into the WBSS. And again, I think it's all going to be good for him because, again, him and Taylor are going to be the 1 and 2 guys. And, these things are always nicely put together and the presentations are good. And so, yeah, it's just good for Prograis all around.
All right, so when we talk about Prograis, John Raspanti, we don't know your opinion yet because you haven't been on to talk about him. This is one of the times where I agree with John Einreinhofer. We don't always agree. I don't know if anybody knows that, but sometimes we have disagreements on fighters. But Prograis is a guy that I think is the real deal, too. He blows out in Dongo, which to me is no big deal. But he handled Joel Diaz pretty easy. I think Diaz was a guy you guys had on the Ringside Boxing Show. What's your take on Prograis?
Oh, it's a trifecta here. I think Prograis is a tremendous talent. And just like John said, we had him on the Ringside Boxing Show, and we were impressed by his brain. He's got a plan, not just as a fighter. He's got a plan as a person. We liked him a lot, Dennis and I. And, yeah, I like to watch the kid fight because he's heavy-handed, and he wasn't that heavy-handed earlier in his career, but he's grown to be a real puncher, and he's exciting. And in a way, this is a mirror image, in a sense, of the Ramirez fight that Ramirez was fighting at home and Prograis is going home for Louisiana, the Rougarou, to fight at home for the first time. And it's a showcase fight, and he's going to blow the guy out, and everyone's going to go home happy. That's the way I'm seeing it. But, yeah, answering your question, Mike, I'm really excited by Prograis. He's 29 years old. He should be in his prime. He's a tremendous talent. I would put him on the top against pretty much anybody at this point because I don't see anybody beating him. I think he's going to win that tournament. Maybe they're thinking Bob Arum is thinking that he has some tough fights in that Arum and in that tournament, and maybe Ramirez can get lucky against him. But Bob Arum has no desire to put Jose Ramirez anywhere near Regis Prograis. So yeah, he's a super talent, fun guy to watch.
All right, and the main event will be Lucas Matthysse against Manny Pacquiao. Yeah, he still fights occasionally. And I know Jeremiah agrees with me on this because he wrote about it a little bit. I think, John Raspanti, that this fight is going to end up being a mismatch. I think Matthysse, if you watched him in his last fight, he didn't look good. He landed the one big punch, which saved his ass on it. But this is a guy that is not what he used to be. Manny's not either, but Manny still has some skill. The other thing is this. Can Manny knock Lucas out? Because Manny hasn't stopped anybody, I don't think, since Miguel Cotto in 2009.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I just posted something on Max Boxing about it. Lucas Matthysse looked very listless in his last fight. Now, maybe he gets up for this one. Now, will that help him very much? A little. I mean, these guys got a lot of pride, Mike. We all know that, and he doesn't want to embarrass himself against Manny Pacquiao. So I would think he's going to be the best he can be on Saturday. Now, is that good enough to beat Manny Pacquiao? No. I think Pacquiao, even though he's 39 years old, obviously is the faster fighter, foot and hands. And I think the same thing. I think he might finally stop that streak. He's certainly due to halt that 9-10 year streak of not stopping anybody. It wouldn't surprise me. You always think he's going to win a decision because most of his fights go the distance, as we're saying. But I don't know. I kind of have a feeling he might just stop him late, around round 10 or something like that, and go from there. And I think the guy who loses this one definitely should go home and stay there and not fight anymore.
Yeah, and don't you think, Jeremiah, that this is a very exciting fight just because Boo Boy's working the corner for Manny Pacquiao instead of, Freddie Roach?
No, I think it's exciting if you're, in some Manny Pacquiao rumor mill and, you're praying at the altar of Manny Pacquiao every day in the Philippines. I don't really see how this is helpful. I don't really, I can't really divulge any of the information in regards to the Freddie Roach, Manny Pacquiao split. I'm not sure what's going on. All I've heard is Freddie Roach asked Manny Pacquiao if he was mad at him. Pacquiao smiled, hasn't really heard from him since. But I don't think it matters. This fight is one of those fights where Pacquiao doesn't need to be trained to 100%, and I think that's what's going on in his training camp. Really, I mean, he's not learning anything. Even at his age, he's probably not going to learn anything anyways. But with Boo Boy, he's not going to learn anything in his corner. There's no real sharpening of the tools there. He's essentially just training, and then he's going to go fight. But it's good enough to beat Lucas Matthysse. I liked Lucas Matthysse when he was at his best. I mean, he was one of the few genuine punchers, between 140 and 147, a guy who could knock you out with a single shot. But he's just not – he's too slow. He doesn't have the nuance that Manny Pacquiao does. It just seems like a pretty easy fight. I mean, I think Manny Pacquiao is just going to outspeed him. He's going to outmaneuver him, and I think he's going to stop him late.
All right, so John, do you agree with everybody else that this is kind of a mismatch, or do you think that with Lucas Matthysse, with the punching power and the fact that Boo Boy, every time I hear somebody say Boo Boy, it makes me chuckle, by the way. But with this, with no Freddie Roach, is there a chance here that Manny Pacquiao just shows up and is completely done?
Yeah, there's definitely. I think here, and I mean it more than anything's possible, I do think there's a chance Matthysse can win here with his punching power. The odds on the fight are actually close. Manny Pacquiao's minus 185, Lucas Matthysse plus 170. So the odds makers have got it not far off of even money. I think where I just differ a little bit here is the record of 35 plus fighters fighting each other, especially below heavyweight, is not a good one for good fights and action. It's where the fighters have lost a little bit mentally as well as physically. Where I disagree is I don't think there's going to be any kind of mismatch here. I do pick Pacquiao as well, but I see this is going to be a sparring session, basically a glorified sparring session. I don't think there's going to be a lot going on here with a 39-year-old and a 35-year-old guy. But I think the X factor is that power is the last thing to go. I think at a weight as low as welterweight, even at 35, Matthyse's power could start to go. That guy he knocked out last time, he was huffing, puffing along the way and finally got him, that Tewa Karam, and we didn't know what to expect, but the guy didn't end up being very good. I think Matthysse, if the power's still there, which it might be, he could catch Pacquiao and end it, I think. I'm guessing that it'll be a safety first type of sparring session. And Pacquiao, the one thing he does do, even though he's 39, is he's shown even in recent fights, he'll still move his hands enough. So that's what I'm banking on there. More of a sparring session type thing, but Pacquiao has been a guy, even at the advanced ages, who will move his hands, and I think he probably does that enough against Matthysse to win a uneventful decision. But I think it's within the realm of reasonable possibility that Matthysse could catch him with the punching power, and that would be the end for Pacquiao. But I'll pick Pacquiao here.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about the World Boxing Super Series, which, in a way, the monster at bantamweight has joined the tournament now, Jeremiah. And I know you really like the World Boxing Super Series, and having Inoue in this is, I think, huge for this tournament.
Yeah, it is, and I think it's huge for Inoue, too, because he's a guy, who has been ascending a pound-for-pound list for a few years now. And, I think there's some credibility to that. I mean, he looks like the monster his nickname implies. My issue is he's not really beaten stellar opposition. I mean, I don't know how I just can't see how the guy could be, in the top 3. I wouldn't have him in the top 5, in my opinion. The opposition level has just not been there. I mean, he started off at 108, then he bypassed 112 that had Don Nietes. He had a pit stop at 115, didn't fight Rungvisai or Estrada. He's been trinket grabbing. He's been weight hopping and trinket grabbing, and it looks good on the resume. It looks pretty, but we really haven't seen him fight anybody who would test him. I mean, his best win arguably is Omar Narvaez. Narvaez was, I think, rated number 1 at 115. But again, Einreinhofer and me talk about this almost weekly. These divisions are thinner now because there are so many of them. Narvaez would be a lower top 10 type player in a Classic 8 setting. When he fought Nonito Donaire years ago, he looked pedestrian. He fought scared the whole time. He didn't do anything. He fought to survive. I doubt he won a round. It's been a while since I watched fight, but there was just nothing special there. And then you have, I think, Taguchi, who's a good fighter, but was just upset by Heki Budler, who's a good fighter, but nothing special. Certainly, no one who's going to crack any pound-for-pound list anytime soon. So anyone's really got to be tested, and I think this is something that could do it for him. I mean, he's in a Classic division at 118. He's being paired with some of the world's best here. I mean, it's still being formed. So, I think we're still waiting on 2 more people to join, and one of those pending is Ryan Burnett. I'm hoping the other one is Nordine Ubali, who is a good fighter, had a rock-solid amateur career, quick southpaw who can punch a bit. I would actually love, this is just my personal preference, because Rigondeaux has been seen as a smaller guy throughout his whole career, and I noticed that he was training. I would love to see Rigondeaux and Ubali join. Burnett can stay out. I'd rather see Rigondeaux even at this point. I think he's a better fighter. But yeah, it's one of those things that I think if boxing can get in the groove of having these things every year, I think it bodes well for the sport. And, of course, I'd like to see it reduced to, 8 or 9 divisions, and I think that would do well. And, I think as an alternative, and Kurt Emhoff has thrown this idea around, where you'd have a WBSS-type league where it wouldn't conflict with the All-E Act, and you just have all the promoters come together at, one time of the year. All their guys would fight. You get a big payout. You generate all sorts of betting revenue, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, back to Inoue, it's good for him. He's going to be the favorite going in, but it should be interesting. I mean, there are some guys who should be able to test him, and that's what we need to see. But the style format itself is just something you need to see more of in boxing. You need to see the best fight the best more often. We don't get it enough, and the WBSS is giving us that.
All right, John Einreinhofer.
Yeah, I see that a lot the same as Jeremiah. I think he and I have agreed a lot on Inoue. He looks good. You compare him somewhat to Golovkin when Golovkin was, on his knockout roll. But he hasn't really faced the opposition. I agree with Jeremiah. I mean, you got Narvaez, who, not only didn't engage against Donaire, but then he just fought Tate, and he did the same thing. And, if that's arguably his best win, being fair to Inoue, I thought McDonald might test him more, and he got him out of there immediately. Bodes well for Inoue, but I hate to say it, but just McDonald just did not seem as engaged as you would have expected in that fight. I mean, he had fought tough against Kameda twice, and I expected to see that McDonald coming in at least and maybe not being victorious. And, I guess, maybe he just got caught in the first round, but it just didn't look like he was all there. But, I got to give Inoue a credit for the win. That makes it more interesting for me with him in the World Boxing Super Series 118-pound tournament. I'm all in favor of the tournaments in the sense that, I'm with Jeremiah. I mean, I'd like to see, 8 divisions, 9 at most. And I think if we had it limited to that and you wanted to have an 8-man tournament, I'd be fine with it. But I think if we're going to be talking about 17 divisions and we're going to have World Boxing Super Series, it's fluff unless it's 4 guys. 8, you're just talking about fluff fights that you don't need, which is what we don't want, delays everything. You're putting a tag on mismatches. I mean, Nonito Donair's in the 118-pound tournament. I don't need a round with Nonito Donair. He was great in his prime, liked him. He's well past his prime. I give him credit for the all-year-round drug testing, but if this is going to be a tournament where we're really looking for the best at 118 pounds, he doesn't belong in there at this point, let's face it. So the round where he fights somebody is not going to be meaningful, and that's in all these tournaments that they've had so far. That's the problem. If you're having 17 divisions and then you're going to have eight guys in these tournaments, there's all kinds of mismatches and crummy fights in that 168-pound tournament in the early rounds. There's more chance of pullouts if you start out with more rounds, delays. Cut it down to 4, and that's all we need. And then you really give the fans their money's worth. So I think if we're going to do it, let's get it down to 4, unless we're going to start cutting out divisions.
All right, John Raspanti.
Oh, I love it that Inoue's in. He's another real exciting fighter. I thought, like John, that he would McDonald might give him something. I thought he would last a few rounds, but he blasted him out of there, and McDonald felt his punching power right away. Now, McDonald said that he didn't say, but he did look pretty dehydrated in there. But I don't want to take anything away from Inoue. He seems to be the real deal from what he's fought. And this is the problem sometimes in sports and all sports is you watch a fighter and they fight lesser fighters and they look great, and then when they fight somebody who's better, then you go, oh, okay. So you have to be very careful sometimes because we got to see when he moves up. Now, I don't really think I agree with John about 4. I don't, maybe 6 if you want to compromise, but the 168, some of the fights that he might have considered fluffs, I didn't. I enjoy the tournaments. I remember the Super 6 tournament when it came in, and we all know who that made a big star out of, and they had to bring Alan Green in there, but that was still not a bad fight, and I don't mind that. I think it's a showcase for whoever's the best fighter, and if he has a guy that's not as good, it still shows how good he is. So I don't mind that as much. I hear him though. I do. It's a pretty good point, but the compromise might be 6, but these guys, and Nonito Donair, he's at the tail end of his career. He wants to do this. I think it's a gutsy move on his part, so I'm all for it. I don't have a problem with that either. 35-year-old guy, obviously past his prime, but he's going for it. So to me, he deserves respect for that. So, I love these tournaments. I think they're great for the sport. I think they bring the interest up. And if they want to keep doing this like they're doing it for the near future or whatever they're thinking, I'm going to totally support it because I think it helps boxing. I do. I think it's good for the sport.
All right, another topic: World Boxing Prediction League. Bob Day, who knows everything there is to know about boxing, he knows more than all of us put together, made a comment that Miguel Cotto,
especially about 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, which is like 6 or 7 our time. It's confusing. But we're not going to say anything else, Bob. We're not going to blow your cover. So my question is this: John Raspanti, we'll start with you. Is Miguel Cotto an all-time great?
No. Miguel Cotto was a good fighter. Sometimes a very good fighter. You look at his resume. He beat Mosley, but Mosley was past his prime. He beat some good fighters. But to be an all-time fighter, to me, you have to beat an all-time great fighter. It's like Ric Flair. To be the man, you got to beat the man. Woo! So he didn't beat anybody that was, every time he fought, every time he moved up. He fought Pacquiao. He fought Mayweather. Now, he gave Mayweather, I was there in Vegas, he gave Mayweather a pretty good fight, but he didn't win. This isn't horseshoes. So he didn't win. He lost to Austin Trout. He lost to Canelo. The Margarita fight, that one. But to me, that's the criteria. If you're going to be considered an all-time great fighter, you have to have beat somebody. And you look at the guys he beat, and they're pretty good fighters. But that's the problem. It stops right there. There's nobody on his resume that you look at and go, wow, that guy was a great fighter or very close to a great fighter. So it's a no-brainer as far as I'm concerned, Mike. No way is he an all-time great.
All right, John Raspanti or John Einreinhofer. Too many Johns.
Yeah, I understand the argument against it, and it's a reasonable argument here. This is kind of what you're looking at, taste, I guess, a little bit. I mean, and I guess I'm looking at it a little more maybe in the modern era. For me, he probably just does get into that criteria. I understand the argument against him, but he did beat Mosley in a great fight. He was a top welterweight, and then he won the lineal middleweight title. And I think when you look throughout boxing history, when you're talking about guys at the top of two, the original 8 divisions, even, that stacks up pretty good when you start looking at it throughout boxing history. And when you consider how good all of the guys he was in the ring with, he's been in with Mayweather, Pacquiao, Canelo, guys been in with, about everybody in this era. And, he did lose quite a few. We can't prove it, but it's likely that he took that beating against Margarito when Margarito had the plaster hand wraps. He was able to avenge that. To go through that and be able to come back like he was able to and win a lineal middleweight title, that's a pretty great accomplishment for me. And he avenged the loss to Margarito, we're going to assume on more fair terms the second time around, even though I think Cotto was always damaged after the Margarito fight. I don't think he was ever quite the same after that. So for me, I think, you get more perspective on it over time, but I think he is going to end up just kind of falling into the all-time great category, but I understand the arguments against him.
Yeah, but to me, and what I brought up to Bob is, do you consider him up there with Sugar Ray Leonard and Sugar Ray Robinson? Marvin Hagler?
No, he's not.
Muhammad Ali, then he's not an all-time great.
Well,
I don't think, my opinion is this. I don't think there's levels to be an all-time great. And the Hall of Fame pisses me off in almost every sport because I think the only people that should be in a Hall of Fame, whether it's boxing, football, baseball, soccer, whatever the hell it is, I think only the greatest that ever did that should be in. And they've basically pimped out the Hall of Fame. I mean, and you've got guys that should not be in there. And the problem is, I think it skews what everybody thinks is an all-time great. Because Miguel Cotto is not a Hall of Famer. But, and you gotta put the big but in there, the way that it is selected now, he is a Hall of Famer. And I just think that they've bastardized the process. They put in guys that shouldn't be in. And then you see these guys that'll say, well, Donald Curry's a Hall of Famer then, or Nigel Benn's a Hall of Famer, or Chris Eubank. No, they're not. They're not all-time greats. Yeah. You could sit there and say, well, he should be in because he should be in, and that's fine, but it's really not a Hall of Fame anymore. It's just a Hall of very good fighters. Jeremiah?
Yeah, well, no, maybe it is the Hall of Fame. We're just taking the fame part a little too literally. And I again, we talked on the phone about this, Mike. I don't have a problem with certain guys getting in if they're transcendent figures, because we can't make it all about, the Hall. Again, it isn't the Hall of Talent, So if you're a transcendent figure, we talked about Gotti and we talked about Barry McGuigan and the Catholic Protestant thing. People seem to ignore that.
Well, wait a second. I don't think Gotti should be lumped in with McGuigan, though, because I think McGuigan beat an all-time great
right.
Fabio Pedrosa. He also beat Juan Laporte, who would be in my Hall of Very Good. So I think when you look at that, I know what you're saying, though, because I really don't think Barry McGuigan would belong in either, because I don't think he's an all-time great featherweight. But when you put the win over Pedrosa with the other things he did outside of the ring, I mean, I'm somebody that thinks that Arturo Gatti should be in too, just because of what he gave to the game of boxing. I think Sylvester Stallone should be in.
Yeah,
I mean,
I agree.
That was huge for boxing.
Yeah, and a lot of people seem to ignore that. I don't know why people make a joke out of that, because the movie Rocky inspired a lot of people to pick up the gloves. I mean, it isn't as if, he's just an actor and that's just a movie. It was more than that. And you can see that's why they're reviving the series, because it is more than that. I mean, it's something that, if you're 40 plus, it's something you can relate to. It's something that was part of the culture then. But and we talked about Gotti too, but I want to make my point, with Cotto, because I don't want to stray off track here. My thing with Cotto is I understand Einreinhofer's point where, he was pretty competitive against the best of his era. He did win the lineal middleweight championship. Of course, it's not. I don't think we're talking about a prime Sergio Martinez there, but the thing about Cotto's resume that I don't like, and it's that you see it's a common thing nowadays, because there's so many titles in so many divisions. Oh, all of a sudden Miguel Cotto is a 4-division champion, first Puerto Rican to do that, yada, yada, yada. Okay, well, look at what he did. Break those down. Look at what he did at 140 pounds. He won a vacant WBO title against Kelson Pinto. Okay, I mean, are we really going to hang a legacy hat on that one? No. Okay, Pinto's best win, I think, up until that point was against Emmanuel Augustus. The WBO title was still kind of a fringe belt at the time. Okay, and then he moves up and he beats Carlos Quintana. That's a pretty good win. But then he loses the title, and then he gets a fight for a vacant belt against Michael Jennings. Who is Michael Jennings? Does anybody remember Michael Jennings? No, they don't.
I remember him.
Yeah, I remember that he fought.
I think that was like on pay-per-view too, wasn't it? With another fight paired with it.
It very well might have been.
John Einreinhofer know this because he was the sucker that used to buy them with me. We kept in business.
At that time, I was still. I stopped being the sucker about 2008. I think it was.
Well, see,
I think that might have been 2008.
The thing about Michael Jennings is, after Michael Jennings did that, he lost to Willie Thompson. He lost to somebody I've never heard of who was like 36-26, and then Kell Brook knocked him out, and that was pretty much it for him. And that was in 2010.
Yeah, and that's my thing is Cotto is a very good fighter, but because of his association with Bob Arum, he's been gaining opportunities that many other people haven't. Look at so he wins a vacant WBO title against Kamaga. Yeah, right.
The fight.
I was at the Clottey fight, and personally, I thought he was lost. It was a very close fight, and I wouldn't slap you if you had Cotto winning the fight, but I felt that Clottey had won that one. But again, he wins a vacant, WBO title against Kamagai, another handout. He loses to Austin Trout, and Austin Trout, I actually think, helped dictate what level Miguel Cotto was on from 154 and above, because he looked smaller to me. He was out muscled, he was out hustled. And Trout was he was a damn good fighter, but he's not an elite level guy. And then I think his work at middleweight, again, I think the lineal championship, you've got to credit him because he won. But, I think just up until that point, Sergio Martinez was showing signs that he wasn't the fighter he was when he knocked out Paul Williams. I mean, he's struggling with Martin Murray and, other guys of that ilk. I just don't, and not only that, let's just go to, I think more of the meat and potatoes of my argument is that when you look at the welterweight division throughout history, and that was Cotto's best. Okay, his prime was at 147. Where would you rate him? What is he, a top 40, top 50 welterweight? I mean, I can think of 40 guys to rate above him.
I think Cortez would have cleaned his clock.
Well, yeah, even go to the 2000s. I mean, does he beat a prime Mosley? No, he doesn't. Does he beat Oscar De La Hoya?
No.
Does he beat Cortez? Probably not. Does he beat Pernell Whitaker? No. If you had no 140 pounds and it was just 147, does he beat Costa? I don't think so. I just don't see the argument there. There are just too many guys. And if you even look at guys who are from, Puerto Rico, but, Benitez was better. Trinidad was better. You take that to the just south of the American border. Napoli's was better. Luis Rodriguez was better. There are just too many guys that I would rate above him, and he just didn't have that marquee win. He's not an all-time great.
I think this, and I know Bob asked this question too, but I think at junior welterweight, if they fight in 2005, I think Ricky Hatton beats him.
Yeah, that would have been a close fight. Cotto was one of those guys, he looked good at 140, but he also had a couple of rough patches, where he was stunned badly by DeMarcus Corley. He was knocked down by Ricardo Torres. Eventually he came out of all of these as the victor. And I think that would have been a tough fight. I don't mind who you pick either way, but the thing about 140 pounds was that Ricky Hatton was the man, right? He beat Kostya Tszyu, and that's a greater achievement than anything Cotto accomplished down there. But of course, then you can separate the arguments into who is greater and who is better. Cotto may have well been better, but Ricky Hatton at 140 was greater. But again, I'm not going to call that one. But yeah, that's just my thing. Is there just too few? Cotto, he would have lost to Mayweather 140 pounds as well. Charmbe Mitchell would have been a tough test. I'm not saying, Mitchell beats him, but there are just too many guys in the recent area that I would favor over Cotto.
All right, John Raspanti. Did I ask you already? Jeremiah went on so damn long that, I thought I was talking to John Einreinhofer for a second.
Get to wake up, huh, Mike?
John. All right, so.
I taught him well.
When we look at this, in Bob's theory, since it was 3-1, it's 75% to 25%. That means Bob Day is wrong. All right. Let's talk a little bit more boxing news. One that stood out to me that I saw a couple days ago was Beltran is going to fight or defend his title against Jose Pedraza. John Einreinhofer, what's your take on that fight?
Well, it's better than the unknown guy that they were going to have fight Beltran. I think we agree that Beltran's being attempted to be preserved for Lomachenko fodder by Top Rank and Bob Arum. But, Pedraza can fight, and not a bad style matchup either. So, it's better than what they were going to give us with the guy that was going to fight Beltran. I'm hoping now, with the talk of the Orozco, Jose Ramirez fight, this one's a little better. Again, if John Raspanti turns out to be right and it's not too late, maybe Top Rank can get some momentum going with actually putting some competitive matchups that are good fights on regular ESPN instead of a lot of the direct that they have been showing. So, if they that would be a perfect fight if they filled in a good co-headliner or undercard fight to it. I wouldn't want to see a bad undercard fight on Beltran Pedraza.
This should be said that there's not much that's been on any network that hasn't been crap for a while now.
Yeah, we got off to a good start with some of the stuff Showtime was showing this year. And, Gassiev Dorticos was a good fight. But I agree. I think, I was getting ready to try to be optimistic when, we got the Canelo Golovkin 2 signed, and then there was talk of Wilder Joshua. That fell through. We've gotten a lot of bad fights that have been shown on all platforms, I agree, and that seems to be quite a few of those being mentioned for the future. So I'm looking for some reversal of that and some good fights to start getting set. We have Usyk and Gassiev coming up. That's a good fight. One of the fights I was looking forward to.
We got Easter Garcia, which I think will be a blowout, but it's a good matchup, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think Easter Garcia on Showtime, right, you're not going to argue with those two being put together. That's a legit top lightweight matchup. Same here, even though I think Garcia should win. No problem with that. But we need more stuff like that.
All right, when we look at the heavyweight division, it looks like Kulov is going to fight Hughie Fury now because I guess Hughie was the Pullev fight was turned down by Big Baby Miller. What's your take on that, Jeremiah?
Oh, well, I think stylistically it's dreadful. If you
basically, any heavyweight fight we could talk about right now.
It almost is. I think Povetkin is one of the few good offensive fighters, who you could pair with somebody and it would be exciting. Like if you paired him with Jarrell Miller or something, I think that would be a pretty good fight. I don't know. Wilder is fun enough, but there's really not a whole lot going on there. And Fury's one of the few boxer mover types above 200 pounds, and so that kind of makes him an anomaly. And he was competitive against Joseph Parker, but if you're not able to outbox Joseph Parker, who is not able to outbox Anthony Joshua, and this is supposed to be some silly eliminator match. Okay, so if Fury wins, we can look forward to another blowout. With Joshua fighting him. I guess if Fury won, that would be a big domestic showdown. Well, it would generate enough interest. You know how the British fans are. They get excited for a game of darts.
Or soccer.
Or soccer.
As long as Brits are involved in it, that's the key.
Yeah, but you know what? They're better fans. I got to give them that. They are better fans. But it's just
Is it better fans to support any crap that's thrown on your TV and watch it?
No, but it's better to be excited about it. Like whenever I go to a sporting event in the U.S., just by comparison, every boxing match that I've been to in the U.S. completely lacks the excitement that I saw when Ricky Hatton came over and fought Jose Luis Castillo. And we're not even talking about 20,000+ in Manchester. We're talking about 8,000-9,000. And it was still. Yeah, it was just still a fun time. I mean, it was just better than anything I'd been around. But yeah, I mean, you're going to have Kubrat Pulev, who's not a big puncher. He's a guy who likes to jab a lot. Then you have Fury, who's going to move around and jab a lot. It's not going to be an exciting fight. I'm not quite sure I'm going to catch that one. I am a hardcore fan. I like to catch stuff, lower level stuff like that. But I just don't think I'm going to be able to do it.
Well, I'll watch it just because it's two white heavyweights. So
yeah,
that means I can get a nap in. And still wake up for the decision. John Raspanti, the good thing is maybe we get Joshua Wilder at least next April, as Joshua reportedly signed the contract. I don't know what the point of that is, since Wilder hasn't yet, but what's your take on Joshua Wilder?
Well, I figured it was going to happen next year, and I'm glad. I think it's going to happen. Maybe I'm an optimist. There are some people saying, no, it's not going to happen. It's going to happen. It's inevitably going to happen. All the shenanigans going on between the promoters and Eddie Hearn saying this and Wilder saying this. I mean, I'm not even paying any attention to it anymore, Mike, to be honest. I'm just waiting until something is signed and they have a press conference because, they're all about talking and lying, and they're all like politicians as far as I'm concerned. So I don't pay much attention. I'm just going to wait, and being the fan that I am too, along with being a writer, I can wait. I don't mind that they're doing this. I don't get angry that they're doing this. As I said, I figured it was going to be next year anyway. Let Joshua fight again, let Wilder fight again, and then hopefully they win, and then they'll fight each other. That sounds good to me. I mean, you look back in history, that there are some times where that's exactly what happened. A lot where we like to romanticize it, but that's the same thing they did. It's that word that we all hate, that marinating word. But I think this is an inevitable fight, and it's going to happen. I think Joshua wins his next fight. Wilder's going to win, and then we're good to go. But as I said, whatever the promoters are saying, I just tune them out now. It's just a game, I think, to a lot of them, and they know what's going on behind the scenes.
They're going to fight when they're ready to fight.
Right. What they say to us, to the public, is what they say. What they say behind the scenes, a lot of time we don't even hear it. So it's going to happen. It's going to be huge. I think Wilder probably end up going there to the UK. He's saying he's going to. I hope he does. And I think he does. I don't really think he's scared of Joshua. I think he wants to fight him. I think he wants to find out, and that's good. So I think it does happen.
No, I think the scared there is more the people that handle each fighter. All right, let's do this.
Yeah.
You can bring up whatever you want. I'll give you all. Just bring it up if you got a topic. We'll start with John Einreinhofer. John, anything you wanted to discuss?
Yeah, just since we didn't mention it yet, I think trying to be positive on something. It looks like Jacobs and Derry Vyanchenko are going to fight. I mean, that's a legitimate, top 5 or so middleweight fight. I presume that it's going to be on HBO, so that's a good fight. Just on the Miller-Pulev, Miller's saying, and I think his camp saying that, which is possible because he does have a contract with him, that HBO rejected Pulev. I'm just a little bit curious to find out if that's true or not.
HBO has allowed much worse fighters.
Well, that's what I was thinking too. They have allowed some worse stuff lately. I mean, this would be actually legitimate top 10 heavyweights. So I'm not sure why they would reject this one, but Miller's camp could be telling the truth, because I don't think Jarrell Miller's afraid of Pulev, and I agree with Jeremiah. I mean, Huey Fury and Pulev's just an absolutely dreadful style matchup. So
Huey Fury and
really
anybody is a dreadful style matchup.
Yeah.
This is extra dreadful. But I hope. I think we've covered my main concern lately, because it is potentially good exposure for boxing. Is that Top Rank on ESPN deal get it together. I criticize it just because I feel like, as a someone who follows the sport and consumer of the sport, you got to put pressure on these promoters. That's why I want Joshua Wilder. I want Top Rank to provide good stuff on ESPN. I think all we can do as people who follow the sport is try to keep as much pressure on them as we can.
All right. Let's see. Who do I want to go to? Eeny, meeny, miny. Jeremiah.
Well, I'm sitting here, while Einreinhofer's talking, I'm sitting here mulling it over, like, what the hell do I want to talk about? I mean, it's like there's nothing we haven't covered already, and there's been nothing since we did the last show. There's been almost nothing that's come together that.
Yeah, that's why it's been 2 weeks since we've done a show.
Yeah, I'm sitting here thinking, like, I'm seeing guys, violating their probations and getting DUIs. I'm like, that's not all that interesting. Luis Ortiz has a fight coming up. I don't know. I mean, the only thing I guess I can mention is Ray Beltran was originally supposed to fight Roman Andreev, and now Andreev has been replaced by Jose Pedraza, and so all I've got there is it's another in-house matchup. So it's Beltran, I thought he was fighting Andreev so he could hold on to that trinket, while Lomachenko gets healthy, and then Lomachenko can pick it off of him, because again, that would be in-house as well. But I guess since Pedraza is taking over, after watching Beltran's last fight, I actually think Pedraza might be able to win that one.
Yeah, I think he can. I think Beltran's been kind of over the hill since forever. John Raspanti.
Yeah, I was doing like Jeremiah. I was like, geez, I don't know.
Talk about your book. We'll sell the book.
Oh, God, we talk about it all the time.
All right, then talk about something else. I can tell you this, John. How about this?
Hey.
What? Go ahead and interrupt.
No,
Go ahead.
Yeah, real quick. What isn't the was it today or was it yesterday? That was the anniversary of. I don't want to call it an anniversary, but it was kind of like the day Gotti died, right? I saw a lot of chitter chatter about it. And, I remember reading the last chapter, and people are speculating as to whether the girlfriend did it or whether it was actually Gotti.
How about this, real quick? Why don't you give us a book review, Jeremiah? Because I know that John sent you a book. So
that's a good idea. I love it.
Yeah, no, that works for me. Okay, so I did end up reading it. And what I loved about the book was, not only the weaving of the tale of, the guts and the glory, and how they, especially Mickey Ward, this working class hero, and Gotti being this pretty boy who was personable and easy to follow, but the tales of how they became friends, and that one eventually worked the corner of the other, and one thing that I was surprised by was I actually didn't know about I must have forgot that, but the Mickey Ward accident where he fell off the thing and then the thing went up his. I don't know. Yeah. That was something that I was unfamiliar with, but it's well written. I love the passages that were continuously in there, where you break down. I think almost poetically, where you're like, well, a fighter. You're talking about their records and how they might have one more shot. If they lose, they might have one more shot. I love those passages in particular. How it was almost do or die for these guys, and sometimes they died, but they got right back up, and eventually they made a big profit from one another and a friendship. And I found that most warm about the book, about how the guys just became friends, and how you elaborated on how there's something personal in a ring that you can't explain right? There's an intimacy level there that you will never have with anybody else. After beating the crap out of each other for 3 fights, I thought that was wonderful. The whole speculation on the death part, I don't really know. It does kind of leave it up in the air a little bit, though. I was kind of leaning towards the fact that Gotti, he did do it himself. But I don't want to get too much of that because I don't know. But yeah, the book was fantastic, and I encourage anybody, who appreciates the trilogy, go and pick up the book.
Wow. He's speechless. Mike, am I supposed to say something now? How can I follow that? I mean, that's incredible. I really, okay. Well, I really appreciate that.
Einreinhofer may not like it, so we could ask him.
That's true.
Me and John can argue about it.
I'm sure I like it. I like definitely like the subject of Arturo Gatti and Mickey Ward, especially. Arturo Gatti being an adopted son of New Jersey, which obviously he became very popular and legendary there, even though he's, of course, a Italian Canadian. But so it definitely a good topic for John to pick out for a book.
Yeah, and that book you can pick up on Amazon. And like we said, I've read the book. We've all read the book. It's a great book. And, I mean, I'm from Indiana, so the big thing for me is Ed Mulholland's pictures. And I think he's the best boxing photographer out there. So really, go to Amazon, find the book, Intimate Warfare by John Raspanti and Dennis Taylor. Listen to John and Dennis every Sunday. Usually comes out Sunday afternoon on the Ringside Boxing Show. Who's your guest this week, John?
We're thinking it's hopefully going to be Yaki Lopez, who anybody who's a little older, Mike, I won't say how old you are. You're not an old fart like me, but you and I'm sure all of us, obviously, remember him, the blood and guts warrior, light heavyweight with his brawls. It's looking like it's going to be him, and that's going to be a blast to talk to Yaki Lopez because that man, oh my, I can just visualize those fights that he had that I watched on television years ago. And you talk about a heart of a warrior. You talk about a guy who was cut from the same cloth as Gotti and Ward. I mean, that was definitely Yaki Lopez. So that's what we're thinking about right now.
But I'll give you this. He was cut from the same cloth, much like Matthew Saad Muhammad was. But Yaki Lopez, I think, skill-wise, was much better than those guys.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, I'm not sure. Yeah, but he was good, and he was damn exciting. I think he was ever in a boring fight. So he's a legend out here. He lives about 30 miles from me, and we're thrilled. We're hoping we're going to get him.
Yeah, John Einreinhofer.
Plus,
go
ahead. Plus Yaki Lopez. What adds to him being a great subject is, that's arguably, in terms of depth, the greatest light heavyweight era of all time.
I don't even think that's arguable. I think that was the greatest time for that. And the time that I knew that Michael Spinks was a great fighter was when he stopped Yaki Lopez and he stopped Marvin Johnson.
Yeah. Yeah, when he did it as easy as he did to those guys, who was tough as those guys were.
How long has it been since you've seen Yaki Lopez and Michael Spinks? Because
since I've seen that, it's been a while since I've watched that.
Go watch it again, because Yaki, I mean, more than held his own for probably the first 5 or 6 rounds of that fight. I mean, he was nailing Spinks, and then Spinks basically just wore him out, and Yaki didn't know how to say no. But the other thing about Yaki is I got to interview him around Christmas last year, and he's as nice a guy as you're ever going to talk to, and it makes me really happy. When I was little, I always cheered for Yaki Lopez, and there's been some people I've interviewed before, usually other sports, where I cheered for that guy, and I go back and look at it now, and I'm thinking, I wish he'd have lost now.
Yeah, I always liked Yaki Lopez when I was watching him fight. I was always rooting for him too, back in those days.
Yeah, one of the greatest fighters to never win a title. And he got 6 shots at it all the way up to the cruiserweight title. I think he fought Carlos De Leon in like the mid-'80s, somewhere around there. It was either early to mid-'80s. But, all right, guys, so make sure you check out the Ringside Boxing Show on Sunday on thegruelingtruth.net. Also, go to Amazon, check out Intimate Warfare. Tomorrow at noon, Survive in Advance. We'll have our daily sports show. Tomorrow we got Matt Andrews-Scavage, 49er beat writer for The Grueling Truth, who will come in to talk a little bit about the 49ers. Then Friday, we will have one of my favorite topics, since we've got Josh Raymond Castro, who was an MLB beat writer that believes Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame. I believe he shouldn't be. So Friday, we're going to have that debate. So make sure you check us out there also. All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up for tonight. We'll be back next week to talk about, I think we got Usyk and Garcia next week, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've got some fights to talk about for the next few weeks. Easter is fighting on the 28th against Garcia also. So make sure you check out all of our shows on iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher. Wherever you find sports podcasts, you'll find The Grueling Truth. So for John Raspanti, John Einreinhofer, Jeremiah Preisser, that's a lot of J's. I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.